Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting news that we got for Fatal Frame, Maiden of Blackwater, that's set to release onto the Nintendo Switch and other consoles on October 28th. We recently got our hands on the developer interview with the producer, Keisuke Kikuchi, regarding not just the Switch version's launch, but also the other versions as well, and essentially what's being changed for this version of the game. Remember that this game originally launched in 2014 exclusively on the Wii U, so a lot of changes were needed to be made if you wanted to bring it over to modern gen consoles without the essential use of the joypad. And huge shout out to Nintendo Everything. I'm gonna leave a link in the description below so you guys can check it out for yourselves. They're the ones who went ahead and translated this, so definitely huge shout out to them for being able to provide us the details as to what the Famitsu interview actually detailed. But jumping right into the questions, the very first one we got our hands at is, could you talk to us about the details on how Fatal Frame, Maiden of Blackwater Remaster came about? And the producer replied, Fatal Frame is the first entry in the series, which was released in December of 2001. So now in 2021, the series is approaching its 20-year anniversary. The original Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater came out in 2014 and received a lot of support from fans and the media. We wanted to show our appreciation and mark this important milestone by remastering the game. Now consider me a bit skeptical, but usually whenever we get these type of remasters for a game that we haven't necessarily seen or heard a lot about, or specifically a series that a lot of people were kind of thinking that it was already dead, is usually to gauge interest to see if they actually release a brand new entry, will it actually matter? Would actually people be interested? And usually releasing a remaster of one of the most recent games usually gets the company, in this case Koei Tecmo, enough information to see if there's still a market for them to be able to go ahead and release a brand new game or essentially some sort of collection in the future. This is something that they just did with Ninja Gaiden when they just released a collection, and essentially one of the developers spoke about this is probably going to be gauging interest into the future of the series to see if they can work on something new. And the next question is, while you have decided to remaster the 5th title in the series this time, were any other options considered, for example a collection of previous titles? And the response is, no, not really. We wanted to focus our energy on the most recent title of the series, Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater, and have lots of people play it. We have a lot of pride in this game and the ability to surprise and scare the player in ways that were new to the Fatal Frame series. In another one of the questions, they also were asked directly, like, why were you just not making this a Nintendo Switch exclusive, and why did it put the game on pretty much on every console? And the response essentially was just to get to as many people be able to play it and not limit it to just one console like they did with the Wii U. So it's one of those things where, like, they just essentially are, like I said before, they're trying to gauge interest as best as possible to be able to see just how many people are interested in the series to see if they can make a comeback. The subsequent question is, since 2014 there have been no announcements regarding the Fatal Frame series. Has your company been working on new projects during that time? The response is, there have been a lot of discussions within the company involving the Fatal Frame series and director Makoto Shibata and some of the younger employees. However, while none of those discussions ever came to fruition, we ultimately settled on the remaster for the 20th anniversary. We're happy that people can once again play the Fatal Frame series. I do find this interesting alongside the previous question when they said that they never considered a collection, because like I mentioned before, it's just one of those easy ways for them to be able to just get enough attention out there to gauge the interest of the fan base, essentially, which is ultimately what this is all about. I also didn't necessarily know that this was actually the 5th entry in the series, so that does mean that there's a whole heck of a lot of games out there that they could definitely remaster and bring back, or just rebuild from the ground up, which I'm sure they're from older consoles, and fans would love to be able to see a new version or a new take on that same game. The next question is, in the original Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater, the Wii U gamepad was used as the camera obscura, leading a very unique gameplay. This time the game will be displayed on the Nintendo Switch. Are there any similar special modes in this game, such as portable mode acting as a camera? And the response is, yes there are. In portable mode, the Nintendo Switch gyro controls allow the console to be used as a camera obscura. Interestingly, the Wii U gamepad was actually about the same weight as the envisioned camera obscura in the game, and the Switch is a little lighter, but I think it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I do think that this is one of those titles that's going to benefit a lot if you're actually playing on the Nintendo Switch OLED and you're especially playing in handheld mode like they're talking about here, using the gyro controls, because the OLED screens are really good. That's actually one of the things that a lot of people are just kind of outright dismissing about the Switch OLED. OLED screens are just magnificent, and they're just miles ahead of what you actually have on the Nintendo Switch right now, which the screens aren't necessarily all that great. So there's definitely going to be a night and day difference that people are not necessarily expecting as of right now. They followed that up with, this time the game includes a new photo mode. Can you tell us a little more about the reasonings for including that? Recently, a lot of games have included a traditional photo mode in addition to a traditional photo mode. Spiritual photography is also possible, which fits well into the Fatal Frame series. At the time, I was also acting as a producer on the Atelier series, and so how much the photo mode allowed the players to enjoy the characters and costumes, and how good the response was from the fans had been, and I thought it was great. It was definitely something that would work well with the Fatal Frame series. Of course, the spirits in the game can be very scary, but using the camera mode is possible to take interesting and sometimes humorous pictures. The feature felt very at home in the Fatal Frame game. Now, I do find this interesting only because I didn't necessarily know that he was actually working in the Atelier series, and in the Atelier Ryza they definitely made a big focus with the camera mode. The photo mode in that game was really good. It was something that they definitely pushed a whole heck of a lot as well. I do believe even post-launch the game received like updates for like free like photo frames and stuff like that as well. Atelier Ryza 2 got the same treatment as well. So it was one of those things, so like they definitely made a big push for photo mode, and it was one of the things that I definitely think paid off in social media, because again, interactions and social retweets and stuff like that is what a lot of these companies care about the most nowadays, including sales, of course. So it's one of those things that I do think that they definitely pay attention to if a lot of people are sharing images of the game that they just recently put out. The next two questions, I put them together only because they're short and they're definitely important. The game has had great graphics for a time, but what areas have been improved in the remaster? Firstly, we increased the resolution. Then we worked on things such as shadows, light, and water effects to increase the overall feelings of immersion. We also improved some areas and the scenery. And then they followed that up with, are there other improved elements or additional content? And then they said, yes, there are. A lot of small areas have been improved, but you will have to wait for further announcements and further details of these. Now, I do think that one of the biggest takeaways visually is that the game does definitely look a little bit beefed up, especially on like the PS4, PS5 trailers that I've actually seen. I don't necessarily think the Switch version is going to be handicapped in any way, shape, or form, or hampered performance-wise, only because this game ran extremely well on the Wii U. So it's not going to be one of those things where like the Switch version is going to be hampered or like running slowly or with bad frame rates or anything like that. But I do think that the PS4 or PS5 version, Xbox Series X, PC version, of course, if the port is actually good, is going to be really, really appealing. So if you're definitely considering visuals, definitely consider those versions as well. And the last question is, the game also includes new costumes for characters. What was the reasoning behind these? And the response is, we wanted the game to feel new even for those players who have played it before. As for designing the costumes, we wanted things that increased the appeal of the characters. For example, Yuri is into cycling, so we gave her a cycling unitard, as we gave Yui matching black and white gothic Lolita looks. I did also notice that they have like Atelier Ryza DLC as well, so it's going to be one of those things where like you're going to have like a lot of Koei Tecmo DLC added into the game, and there's also like some weird like lewd swimsuit stuff as well. A lot of people are not necessarily all that interested as well, so it's one of those things where like it depends on the audience, I suppose. But that's about all the questions that I decided to pick out. There's definitely a few more in the article. Again, I'm going to leave a link in the description. A huge shout out to Nintendo Everything for translating this, and for me too for, of course, having the original Japanese interview. But if you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.